To start with, I'm Sinead Bell, and I look after the baby beauty and toiletries category. And I've been asked today to talk about my career experiences and my journey throughout Tesco. So first off, I'm a sponsor of Women at Tesco, and I'm really proud to be a sponsor of that group. And diversity is really important to me, and inclusion, and it's really important that people can be included in all walks of life, but that's really important that they're themselves as well. In terms of talking through my journey, I thought it'd be really important to share some real personal attributes of how I was me throughout that journey, not just actually talking you through my CV. So first off, a little bit about me. So I have he should appear. I have a Dalmatian called Noah, who is super important in my life. And for any of those of you that are thinking about getting a dog at all, I implore you never to call your dog Noah. After 3 rounds of puppy training, it was evident that the dog can't understand the difference between the word no and Noah. So about 700 quid later, our dog just knows how to sit, which is a real disappointment in our lives. I got married a couple of years ago to Colin. I've been with Colin for 10 years. We did a very untraditional, un-Irish wedding and went to Vegas and got married in the Bellagio and had a great time and flew our parents out there. We're very privileged to be able to go on wildlife holidays as much as we can. And this year we went to Yellowstone and we were really lucky to see grizzly bears and some bear cubs that came out as well. And a little bit about me. So trust and integrity is really important to me. I'm also quite brave, and I'm also quite curious as well. And this picture for me depicts that in its entirety. So I'm about on this picture to go out on a boat to go whale watching. And when you're in a very small boat in the middle of the ocean, you have to be very trusting, you have to be very brave, and a bit curious about actually what's going to pop out of the water. But that's the key element of this. So that's a little bit about me. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk you through my journey and my career experiences, but the real key thing here is that I've been myself every step of the way, and I'm going to show you some probably very unconventional photos to take you on that journey, but I thought that really told the story. So this is me. These are probably one of the 2 only photos that my parents have of me where I am sitting still. The only picture of me and my sister where we're actually dressed in the same outfit, and I'm not running around digging a hole somewhere. As a kid, I was quite a tomboy and much preferred playing with He-Man and She-Ra rather than My Little Pony, whereas my sister was the very girly one out of the 2. Throughout school, I really enjoyed maths and computing, and I quickly learned that actually not a lot of people like maths or computing. And my horrific, almost 1970s style university photo here really depicts the fact that actually I joined university and there were only 8 people on my course and I was the only girl. Not a lot of people actually want to do those subjects combined together, but that made me more determined to actually work through it and really come out with a successful degree and some great friends along the way and apply my knowledge where I wanted to. So this isn't me with a horrific hangover or a super cold as I was last week, although my sister does think I have some very likened attributes to Dobby the house elf. So throughout university, I worked at Odeon Cinemas as a Saturday job, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was a fantastic time to work at cinemas when Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Love Actually, all of those films were launched, and it was a fantastic time. When I finished my degree, I was offered a job as the general manager of Odeon Hastings, and I weighed up whether I should go into the city and do a job, probably making tea for the first year and then building up the ladder, or actually general manager site, looking after finance, the whole P&L, HR, as well as marketing and the booking of films. And I thought, what an opportunity. So I packed my bags, moved down to Hastings, and quickly understood that I had to start all over again. So I knew no one. I had no friends down there. My predecessor in Odeon had been there for 25 years, and my first job was to actually whip the site into shape. And that was quite tough because I couldn't make any friends at work. and then also trying to kind of work through, well, what do you do at the weekend when you don't know anyone? So I found some opportunities, hence drinking, and paying back my student loan. I obviously couldn't afford a glass, so I just drunk straight out of the bottle, but grabbed every opportunity. But that's probably one of the times where I've had to be really brave of actually trusting in myself that I could do the job, bearing in mind I had no one around me. So after a year at Odeon Cinemas, they offered me a site in London, which was great and a really good opportunity to come back and closer to home. But I really started to feel that I wasn't reaching my full potential, and I wanted to do something with my degree and really stretch my ability there. So I applied for a job at Billett's Marketing Sciences, which are now called Ubiquity. And at that stage, they're very focused on econometrics and statistics. So a very geeky job and very much based back to my degree. And I had 3 clients that I worked with on the return of investment for their marketing and also their promotional spend. The first one being Bernardo's, the second one being Premier Foods, and the third one being Lloyd's TSB, which is this guy here. A very fact-based job, very analytical, very behind the screen, yes, sometimes presenting to customers and suppliers, but very kind of hard to actually have fun in the office and laugh out loud. And for those of you that know me, that when I don't have a cold, I do have a very cackly, I was going to use a different word there, a very cackly laugh that kind of echoes across the floor. So having fun is really important to me at work, and I wasn't going to let that hold me in, as opposed to kind of getting out there. And having a bit of a dance to some 70s music is quite up there for me. So I managed to weigh that up and balance throughout time. But as I was reaching my full potential in billets, I really started to get a little bit frustrated in terms of I was implementing the work, but I wasn't actioning the work, and I wanted to see it all the way through. So I was really clear there that I felt like something was missing. So one of my customers, Premier Foods, who look after many range of brands, but in this instance, Kipling and Cadbury Cakes, asked me to come and work for them to bring that function in-house. So to bring all of that promotional return of investment in-house. I weighed it up and I thought, actually, that's great, because that's squaring off the last bit of the jigsaw puzzle that I wasn't getting when I was at Billets. So I moved across into Premier Foods and loved it. Who's not going to love a world surrounded by mini rolls and Kipling mince pies? And it was a really, really energised place to work at the time. Really hard work, but really energised place to work. And after about a year at Premier, the sales director approached me and asked me whether I would consider working in sales. Lo and behold, at that time, it was very much around the fact that no one wanted to work on the Tesco account on sales. So I naively thought, I don't really know anything about sales, but I do know that I'm a cake expert from all the work that I've done. That's eating, and that's not some analytical piece. And therefore, I took the leap of faith and went into the cake team. I was surrounded by 3 account managers for Morrisons, Summerfield and Sainsbury's, that between the 3 of them did over 75 years in cake, so I felt very out of my depth at this moment in time. I was also the only female in the sales team at that time. So off I went, I put the postcode to Delamere Road into my sat-nav and drove down the road and thought, this is the biggest wind-up I've ever seen in my life. This is not Tesco head office. But I walked in and was swiftly marched down to Discounter House for some feedback, I think they called it at the time, but loved it. Loved the fact that I started to feel that actually all the work I was doing was really connecting with customers, and that's the bit that really ticked for me. So I really enjoyed my time at Premier, and my last role in Premier was heading up sales for food service. So I moved out of the retail division and into the wholesale division, which was great to see the different side of food, especially in 3663, Brakes, Booker, as well as the NHS and the Ministry of Defence. At the end of my career at Premier, Tesco came and approached me and said, would you come and work for us? And the first word was no. I didn't want to work for Tesco, and I'm not ashamed to stand here and say that. The reason why I didn't want to work for Tesco is I wasn't sure that it could allow me to be myself. From what I had seen from Tesco, I saw great opportunity, much more career path than I would have had at Premier, but I was really worried about whether I could be myself or not. So I had lots of conversations with lots of different people who saw it as a challenge that I'd said no, lo and behold, and then they kept on kind of hounding me. But I eventually agreed to come and work for Tesco, and I was swiftly put on gardening leave. So gardening leave, didn't really know what that was at the time. Spent the first day at home, the post becomes really exciting. Jeremy Kyle, if you miss a bit, it repeats on ITV2 in the afternoon, and +1, so that's great. But I really did think I have to do something, because I'm never going to get 3 months off again to be able to explore an opportunity. So I went on the internet, and within an afternoon and within a week, I was on a plane to South Africa to go volunteering. Now, naively, I've never slept outside in my life, and I turned up with my wheelie suitcase to a very small town called Hoedspruit with my straighteners and my hairdryer, and they didn't have running water. I was in for the shock of my life. Within 24 hours, I was nearly bitten by a snake, and I had drunk some water where a dead monkey had been sitting in the tank for about a couple of months. I wanted to come home. I didn't feel brave, I didn't feel courageous. I certainly wasn't curious anymore about what could actually happen on this place. But I met some of the most amazing people that I'll always remember, and helping these children over the course of my month in South Africa was one of the most rewarding things I've done. These children stay in the same year group unless they pass that year. So in year 1, you effectively have children that are up to 15 years old because there's 80 in a class and they're never going to get on. So I came back and I joined Tesco. This is where I'm starting to regret some of my personalised pictures. So I joined Tesco in the dairy team, and my key role in dairy was to help launch Freefrom. And Freefrom at that time was really focused around soya milk and a couple of branded yogurts under the Alpro brand, but nothing broader. And there was a really big customer proposition for Freefrom across cheese, desserts, spreads, and so on. However, the suppliers weren't easy to come by. A lot of the suppliers at the time were really kind of making this up in their kitchen and putting it in small pots and selling it in delicatessens. But it was a real opportunity to have something unique for customers at Tesco. So we launched a range which I'm proud to say is still in Tesco at this moment, and it's grown and grown and grown, and really has truly made a difference to a lot of customers that come through our doors. And I'm also really proud to say I was able to be myself when I joined Tesco. My first Christmas party was a 1960s theme, and a lot of people, I suppose, this word's going to make me sound really old, but a lot of people dress up quite scantily clad at some of these fancy dress parties, and I went for comfort over. So I dressed as a Pink Panther. I would highly recommend for anyone that works with farmers, they seem to think it's funny to lasso you round by your tail, which is quite precarious when you're dressed as the Pink Panther, but it was great and I really enjoyed it. Now this next chart is actually one of the hardest charts that I'll put up here today. After a couple of years, or a year in dairy, I moved into frozen to head up meat, fish and poultry. And on the 14th of January 2013, I was notified that horse meat was found in Tesco burgers. At the time, it was really difficult because it wasn't very clear that it was a widespread industry issue. And I doubted myself, I doubted my resilience of whether actually everyone was looking for answers, and we didn't have any answers at that time. There was a lot of questions being raised, and rightfully so, of actually had we done anything to make a supplier actually kind of adulterate our products, for want of a better term. As it started to come out in the press more and more that other retailers and the whole industry was impacted, it made it easier, but we were still at the centre of this. And sending out a note saying we apologise to customers was quite hard, because at that time I did stand there thinking I've done nothing wrong, and we're apologising to the whole nation. And as the 9 o'clock news hit every night over the first 3 months of this, Oscar Pistorius had killed his girlfriend. Margaret Thatcher had died, and the Pope had abdicated, and still horse meat was #1 on the news. So I remember thinking, what else can happen that's going to take this off the headline news? However, looking back at that, That's the best time I've ever seen Tesco come together across all different departments, from government affairs, from the people team to technical to development, to really galvanise and find a proposition back for customers that's going to win with them. And this is a product that's really important to customers. We relaunched the product within 13 weeks at a new site and had a long-standing relationship with our supplier at the time, which is an amazing achievement for anyone that was involved in that project. And true to my slightly crazy nature, I then dressed up as a Smurf for the Christmas party for Frozen that year. I still would like to say, and whilst the cameras are on, an apology to that hotel for the little blue footprints that are probably still all over their carpet. I didn't quite realise that if you paint your top of your feet blue, it's going to get to the bottom of your feet and it's going to be everywhere. But it was easy to find my way back to my room at the end of the party. And then in 2014, I moved into grocery, looking after canned and cupboard grocery and latterly Foods of the World. So many big achievements in grocery that I've worked through, taking a team from quite a low scoring What Matters to You survey to the highest scoring What Matters to You survey in food. But one of the real proud moments for me in grocery was actually tuna sustainability. Again, taking the customer proposition of really standing up and doing what's right for customers and using our scale for good from Tesco, of actually not only changing the health of the oceans from a Tesco brand perspective, but also across the brands that we stock in Tesco across Prince's and John West. This is me in on a tuna vessel in Ecuador. I have to say, whilst a lot of people think it's glamorous to go out on fishing or any kind of supplier trips, every supplier trip that I've been on with fishing, I've ended up throwing my clothes away because the intense smell of tuna will never come out of those clothes. But an amazing place to see, and really did step change actually our sustainability message on fish. And then latterly, which for the people that work for me in the room, which will probably make them smile on this one, I've moved into baby beauty and toiletries. We've done a lot of things in the last few months across a restructure and really landing a new team. And we've had a lot of changes in our team. And I've been in this role since May. But one of the really proud moments that we've done is we reduced the price of tampons, sanitary towels and panty liners by 5%, so taking the VAT off of feminine hygiene products. It's a really important step for us, and actually we led the way on this versus other retailers, and it was just the right thing to do for customers, so a great step forward. My corporate photo is all over the place, and whilst I kind of almost squint my eyes when it goes up everywhere, I am really proud to be leading the baby beauty and toiletries team within Tesco. The picture next to that, whilst I grew up as quite a bit of a tomboy and liked to play around with Rambo and He-Man and Skeletor, it's quite ironic that I'm in the beauty category. I'm starting to learn a lot about skincare regime, hair regime, that I should be doing stuff to it apart from shampoo and conditioning, this intensive conditioners. So I tried a face mask, and I genuinely looked terrified in this picture because I'm not sure what was going to happen when I took this face mask off. I have to say my face just felt a bit wet, but outside of that I managed to survive. But I'll give everything a go, and I think that's really important. So in terms of my journey, as I kind of talked through, I've really tried to add in a little bit about what made me me, and I've never questioned whether I should be myself or bring myself 100% to work in any role that I've done, whether how testing it's been or not. Yes, I've doubted myself, and yes, I've had to dig deep and get a bit more courage. But for me, it was always actually, if I can be myself, I know I can achieve it. To that end, we're just going to show you a quick video. I think this video really sums it up of actually, be yourself and you can really achieve.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do. I just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh my God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out, and when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. It doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm gonna do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Yeah.
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Hello. Hello. So Chris G, Category Director of Health and Wellness. It's great to be here today. I'll talk through the course of the next 10-15 minutes a bit more around my career and my journey. But it's great to be here, and I echo absolutely quite a few of the themes Sinead talked about around authenticity, being yourself. We've actually had some similar career experiences, but interestingly on my side, they've all been in Tesco. So I'm kind of unashamedly pro Tesco, and I kind of want to talk to you about why, because I do genuinely feel like I've had an amazing career experience here, being myself, and I kind of want to give you a sense of how I've achieved that, and I think some learnings maybe for you guys, and hopefully we'll cover a bit of that over the next 10-15 minutes, and then through some Q&A. So I'll talk to you about my journey, and I'll talk to you about what I've learned, and hopefully some of it rings true. I'd also like to say, so I'm sponsoring the Food Graduate Scheme this year, and I've given a very similar presentation to this in front of the food graduates a few weeks ago, and it was just super inspiring actually to be down with 120 graduates talking to them about their opportunities 12 years on from when I was genuinely sat in the same place as they were. I started 12 years ago, and I'm a big supporter of the graduate scheme, and actually the graduates themselves, and I'm a real believer in the talent they'll bring through. So again, day one wasn't particularly inspiring. A few of you might recognise this photo. I mean, the puddle in particular, I just remember from day one. And we did all of our interviews off-site in a hotel, Ponsbourne actually, at the Ponsbourne Hotel. And as a university graduate at the time, I thought, wow, great, hotel, and we stayed overnight, and it's brilliant, all the assessment centres, etc. And so when I arrived on day one, I was genuinely quite shocked. So I was in the building, the big grey building there, and it's kind of, well, what to say that's printable on camera? It was quite shocking, but actually it was quite emblematic of Tesco at the time, to be fair, and emblematic of some of the growth and opportunity we'd seen over the past 10 years. But it was less than inspiring, and it kind of did make me sense check. I was actually on the finance graduate scheme. It did make me sense check what I was doing joining the company at that stage. And I was marketing finance, so you know, I got quite quickly into the world of Clubcard, and you know, it all started to make sense. But yeah, after a year doing marketing, a year doing property in the finance team, I actually got called into an office and asked if I wanted to go to LA. And I genuinely thought it was a joke, but literally 2 years after I started in Tesco, I did actually end up moving to California. And I promise you, I had to pinch myself on landing in Los Angeles. I mean, some of you might have been out there, some of you might indeed have worked for Fresh and Easy, and obviously, quite sadly, it hasn't made a success of itself. Having said that, when I started, so I moved over to California, it was just super exciting. I mean, for those of you who've been in a startup, amazing. I mean, if those of you get a chance to do that, absolutely grab hold of it with both hands. I mean, I moved out there in January. We started opening stores just a few weeks prior to that. And, you know, what to do in a business where you don't have like for like. We had zero base to go off. It really makes you think actually around what are the business metrics that you might look at. But also you learn a lot about yourself moving into a startup environment. I mean, I became, you know, so passionate about this business and actually what I saw it could deliver for customers. You find out a lot about yourself, about resilience. So we worked, you know, quite long hours, I'll be honest with you, but you know, getting out of bed in the morning every day and going to work for a business like this, I mean, just really, really inspiring. And for those of you kind of, I guess, who haven't had that in your career or are searching for that, I mean, I can absolutely say if you work in an area or in a business where you wake up and you love what you do, it step changes your experience, for sure. And not everyone gets to do that. And I'd really, really kind of encourage you to seek out those opportunities where actually you get to be yourself and you get to do things you love every day. Because, I mean, look, it helped being in LA for sure, right? I mean, you know, sunny every day. You know, you plan things at the weekend and it was sunny at the weekend. You didn't have to think about whether it was going to rain. So, you know, brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. So I spent a year out there and then looking for what to do next. And I got a call from someone who headed up internal audit for Tesco, asking me to join the world of internal audit. And again, I mean, internal audit sounds terrible, right? It was actually brilliant. And I'll tell you why. I mean, first, I moved to South Korea with internal audit. I moved to become the head of internal audit in South Korea. You'll notice, actually, some of the businesses I've been in are no longer around. Which I'm sure, I hope is no reflection on where I've been, but we actually had an amazing business out in South Korea. And you know, it's quite sad that we had to sell it for all the reasons we knew we had to back 2 or 3 years ago, but it was a brilliant business. You know, we started from no stores and we partnered with Samsung to build up a 300-store business in something like 10 years and very, very successful. And a lot to be learnt, actually. It's a bit of a case study around how you work successfully overseas. Actually, having a joint venture partner who is local is seriously helpful in understanding how shoppers think and act in some of our countries overseas. It was a brilliant opportunity. It was actually one of the hardest times in my career. And I'll be really, really candid with you and say there were times, I think a couple of months in, where I really wanted to make the phone call and move back home. It was unbelievably lonely. We had 6 expats in our South Korean business. This was a business, by the way, the size of Waitrose, so £4 billion we turned over a year. We had 6 expats and 10,000 Korean employees. So the Korean employees, brilliant, but there's a bit of a lack of English, you know, quite rightly, you know, in the business. So I had translators for all my meetings. So I had to recruit a translator, and everything just took twice as long. I probably learnt myself where you have to draw the line on work-life balance. So, you know, the importance of having a social life outside of work sounds really, really obvious, right? And I guess where we're all here now, we all have a good kind of social life outside of work. When you move overseas, you have to really focus on that. And actually, it doesn't come easy making friends in an overseas environment. And actually, you sometimes have to grab onto the things that you would never normally think you did. I don't know, I got into hiking, right? I've never hiked in my life. But actually, it was a great way to meet people. So I got into hiking. But you have to challenge yourself around what work-life balance you actually want to achieve. Because actually, in the first 2 or 3 months I was out here, I had zero work-life balance, and it really was very, very tough. And I certainly wouldn't advocate that. So I spent 2 years in South Korea, and again, searching for what happens next. And this is where my kind of story takes a slightly strange turn. I had a call from an HR director about a program they were sponsoring called the Broader Leaders Program. So it was a bit around how do you get people moving cross-functionally across the business. And so she asked me if I wanted to go and work in commercial at the time, product now. And I just thought, well, that sounds pretty interesting, and I'm quite interested to see what the world of commercial is. Back then it was had a bit of a reputation, for sure. It was quite a kind of hard-nosed environment. But literally the next thing I knew, I was on a plane, and I moved to be the crisps buyer in the UK. So I was head of internal audit, and I moved to be the crisps buyer in the UK. And those kind of moves just don't happen. I don't think they happen in many companies. I really don't. And I really think it's testament to the way Tesco develops talent and can develop talent that they can facilitate moves like this. And I genuinely would challenge all of you around, which part of the business do you really want to be in? I got super obsessed by crisps. I really, really, and I still love crisps. And do you know what? Before I moved into crisps, I didn't really like crisps that much. I genuinely think they've changed something in my brain, because I really love crisps now. These are hoisin duck crisps. I won. We won. We won own label crisp of the year with these hoisin duck crisps. I mean, who knew that existed, right? Yeah. Thank you, Javier. Yeah, cheers. Own label crisp of the year, and I just kind of got really into product, actually. What makes customers tick when they buy product? If you took 20p off that product, what happens in store? And particularly on Tesco brand, actually. For those of you who've worked in products, when you understand the kind of the work that goes into our Tesco brand offering, it's kind of amazing. And it makes you really look at the supplier brands and think, actually, we provide some great competition here. And I remember the year where we outsold Sensations with our finest crisps, and it's a super proud moment. So anyway, that's enough about crisps probably. But I then moved into alcohol. So I was doing the buying job on crisps. I then did the selling job on alcohol, which isn't really a job, to be honest. I mean, I just loved it. It's like a hobby. I got to think about our alcohol offer day in, day out, and how we help customers, I guess, have a great time in a very, very sensible way. And I got to look at our finest wine range, which is fantastic. For those of you who have tried it, for those of you who haven't, I'd absolutely recommend any of these finest wines. But I got to look at our spirits offer. I got to look at our beer offer. I got to look at the channels that we operate in. And again, it probably just says something about me that I'm not a wine expert. I'm not a spirits expert. But what I am is reasonably curious around how customers interact with products. And I guess that's what I would encourage you to take out of some of my slides is, that you don't need to be experts in these areas. There's some areas you do need to be experts. So we do have product development experts, as an example, that develop some of these amazing wines. But I would say if I was at all an expert, it'd be more in customers and how they buy products. And frankly, a lot of us are experts in customers and how they buy products because we buy products every day. So there's a lot to be learned around how can I go from being an internal audit manager to kind of a selling manager on beers, wines, and spirits. And genuinely, there's always more skill sets that unite us than divide us. And I'd always think that there are more skill sets that you guys will have that are more transferable than developing necessarily within one function. Although, of course, you can develop your careers in any which way you'd like. So I spent quite a few years in alcohol and enjoyed quite a few years in alcohol. And then I've ended up as category director of health and wellness. So the flip side of the alcohol equation. And do you know what? I mean, I joined in May, and it's been a brilliant experience. It's been a brilliant experience. So I look across our in-aisle healthcare offer, so vitamins, drugs, family planning. And then I also look across our 400-store pharmacy chain, our opticians chain, and also the product health program. And there are some super humbling things about being involved in this area, particularly in the pharmacy line of work. Our pharmacists, day in, day out, are having really quite candid, emotive conversations with customers around their health. Actually some quite acute health needs. And so, it's been very, very humbling. And there's some examples here about how we participated in the Healthy Swaps event in May. We offered free blood pressure checks at our pharmacies, and we ran 25,000 blood pressure checks across the month of May with customers. And again, some really humbling results. I mean, customers who did not realize their blood pressure was that high. I mean, would you? You wouldn't necessarily realize some of the health risks that are out there. And in some instances, we literally had to call taxis for them to go to doctors because their blood pressure was so out of kilter versus any kind of normal scale. So very, very humbling working in this area, but actually I'm super passionate around what we can do for health and wellness within Tesco. So just to kind of move on to a slightly different area, I wanted to give you a sense of why I think authenticity and diversity is so important, and particularly in the product area. This is partly because we work with so many different types of people, customers, colleagues. If I think about our fresh teams working with farmers, yet if I think about the package team that work with some of the biggest brands in the world, there are really diverse needs of both the supply base and the customer in these areas. And so I just think it's really, really important that you can be yourself and you can be authentic, because in reality, our customers are diverse and our customers want that authenticity. And the slide I love, and for those of you who know me, I talk about BrewDog quite a lot. But this is the founder of BrewDog, James Watt, back in 2007 when he was starting BrewDog up in the northeast of Scotland. And it's just a great story with Tesco, and some of you have heard it before. I'll try and be really quick. He won a competition for his beers to be listed in Tesco in Scotland, and that was his first ever listing in Tesco in Scotland. And he is now, they have turnover of 72 million, they have 2 sites, one in the northeast of Scotland, one in the US, and he has made his career partly, and he'd probably say kind of in large part due to decisions that were made by our buying teams with him to back his product. And he's a super disruptive guy, for those of you who know him. He's got some amazing books out around how he built this business. And he's a real risk taker. But actually, how you disrupt businesses, how we take our business, how we take Tesco to the next level, is in part by working with disruptive businesses like this. And it requires us to understand diversity, and it requires us to understand authenticity to make these kind of businesses work. And BrewDog is now $1 billion brand. And he started in a stall in the northeast of Scotland, and he started with a listing in Tesco in Ellen. So, brilliant, brilliant story for those of you who know it, and for those of you who don't, come speak to me afterwards. Just a couple more slides. I wanted just to kind of go back around on this point of broader career paths. This actually, I picked this off the Tesco PLC website, and I showed this to the graduates. You would never think of this scale of opportunity and diverse opportunity in Tesco unless you worked here. So when I showed this to the grads, it's kind of like, wow, look at the scale of opportunity we have. And again, I think I don't look at myself as being necessarily narrowed to developing my career in any one of these disciplines. I feel like there are skill sets which would set you in really good stead across multiple of these disciplines. And I would say, where are you going to find your home that gets you up in the morning and makes you feel like you're doing a great job and you're having an impact? So I think there's loads of opportunities, but sometimes I think we need to look broader necessarily than our own function. And lastly, I'll just say, I really think Tesco needs you, and I think Tesco needs talent. And if you look at any of the challenges that we face over the next 5, 10, 20 years, it's going to be the people in this room and the people more broadly in this building and in stores that help us address some of the challenges that we face. German discounters, high street bargain stores, the rest. But these are the 3 things that have held true for me in my career, and hopefully resonate. But I've mentioned being authentic, and I've mentioned being yourself. And as I've moved across various career paths and various disciplines, it's quite easy to kind of try and mold yourself to what you think a commercial person might be or a finance person might be. But in reality, that's not what will differentiate you. What will differentiate me in commercial is being a finance person in commercial and actually being myself in commercial, right? Rather than being necessarily a commercial person. Be curious. I really think there's just so much interest in Tesco and with our customers, be it wine, be it crisps, be it the pharmacy chains. I just think there's lots to be interested in, and actually I think that will help in your career development. And the last thing I'd say, and this one's quite important to me, is how do we challenge convention and do things differently? If anything that the last few years have taught us is we can't keep doing things the way we did them. So what does disruption look like? How do we do things differently tomorrow than we did yesterday? And I've kind of underpinned that by a bit of a call to arms around your network, because actually that's what does stand you in reasonable stead as you navigate yourself through this business. And I don't mean just a network. It doesn't need to be directors. It doesn't need to be people working for you. It can be anyone. But those of you who you can kind of sense check ideas or sound off when you're having a few challenges, your network will see you through. So that's about it from me. And Sinead, I think. Yep. And we are open to Q&A, I think. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Chris, you mentioned on a couple of occasions that you picked up a phone, someone on the other end thought of you, especially when you're overseas, the other side of the world. What made them think of you when you weren't sort of in their face all the time or walking past them in the corridor? Yeah,
I guess, so all the times that's happened actually is when they've been looking for someone to take a chance and do something different. And I guess I got known for someone to be known as someone who would do something different and actually would take a chance. It is, as you say, absolutely, really, for those of you who worked overseas, you feel quite disconnected to the centre. So actually how you keep those relationships going between South Korea, which is a 9-hour time difference to the UK. I was quite lucky in internal audit actually, because we had our base here. So actually I came back every quarter for various team meetings. But it's definitely something to think about. But I think when you're known as someone who will take chances and actually see the positive in things and actually see areas of opportunity, I think sometimes those chances kind of follow you around. Yeah.
This one's more probably for Sinead, because you worked in so many different companies before Tesco. I'm just wondering kind of what you pull out as the key differences about the culture at Tesco versus other businesses, and whether that's kind of been a positive change or whether there's something that we're maybe missing, I don't know.
So as I said, kind of leaving Premier, coming into Tesco, I was quite worried about whether I could be myself at Tesco or not. Premier was quite a challenging company to work for, even though I really enjoyed it. But culturally, it was quite hard. It was a real kind of work hard, not actually play hard, just work hard attitude. And very kind of stuck in the dark ages a little bit at that time in terms of not a lot of focus on end of year reviews, PDPs, etc. I think over my time at Tesco, so in the last 6.5 years I've been here, we've been on a massive journey, and I think the step forward to everyday conversations, to in-the-moment feedback, to actually having really strong PDPs and really split between the how and the what is a fantastic culture to work with, but it is all on ourselves to kind of really embrace that and actually really kind of step that forward and drive it forward ourselves, and then it opens up all of those opportunities. So the platform is absolutely there, and I think it's one of the strongest cultures that I've worked in.
I'm not sure if I can add to that, actually. That was a very good answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Praise, in the moment feedback.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, it's changed an enormous amount, Tesco, for sure, in the last few years. When I was reflecting with my team the other day, imagine having, if I, as a director, had an office. I mean, that just seems ludicrous. And yet, 3 or 4 years ago, that was standard practice for all directors to have offices. And I just think, why would I need an office now? What would I do with an office that I can't kind of be out and speaking to the team? So, I mean, that just is one small example of actually, I just think, wow, what a change, and what a change for the better.
Okay, so yeah, for Sinead, just as being like a head of, as a woman, what other advice could you give to like other budding women in Tesco's?
The best bit of advice I could give is be yourself. So whilst I still sometimes get instant messages across the floor of my cackling laugh that moves, that's not going to stop me laughing. And whilst, yes, sometimes I am aware that I might be the only woman in the room, and whether that was at Premier Foods, whether that was in my degree, or whether that's in some of my Tesco meetings, I just see that as an opportunity that I can bring a bit of more diversity into the room and a different way of thinking. So I don't look at it in terms of that I'm the only woman in the room. I look at it that I've got something else to give the room, which maybe the rest of the group can't bring. I've never let it make me think that I need to change myself to fit in with that group or almost kind of be a bit of a stereotype. And like I said right at the beginning, I'm really proud to be the sponsor of Women at Tesco, because I think my career journey does stand up in terms of saying that you can be yourself and you can be a woman and you can get on.
Hi, I'm Ali from Supply Chain. I was just wondering, they sent out an email earlier today talking with a TED Talk about the importance of mentoring. And I was very interested to see that they talked about things like reverse mentoring, where you're mentored by someone kind of less experienced than yourself, and peer-to-peer mentoring and group mentoring. Have you used any of those types of mentoring, or just the standard, the typical type, to help you in your careers?
Yeah, I think reverse mentoring is super interesting. I don't think I've used it formally before, but I don't discount that for the future actually, because I think particularly in the digital space, interesting. Just speaking to the grads a few weeks ago, they are digital natives, and what they bring into this business from a digital knowledge point of view is really, really interesting for us, I think, and actually how we learn from them. As much as they can learn from us. But actually, having been in Tesco 12 years, am I at the cutting edge of digital knowledge? For sure not. So I think it's a really interesting space. I think we can all learn from people coming through. But actually, there's colleagues across the business that we can learn from, not necessarily in a kind of director-manager space or any kind of hierarchy. So I think it's very, very interesting space, reverse mentoring. Yeah.
I think I'll just add to that. I think mentoring is one of the most important things that we can do as part of our own development. And I mentor quite a lot of people in Tesco, and there is an inherent fear that if you ask someone to be your mentor, that they're going to shut this artificial door in your face and tell you to go away. Now, as Chris articulated, we don't have a door to shut anymore, so that's not going to happen, and it's a fear that still sits with a lot of people. I think there's a very big difference between mentoring and coaching. And it's really important of what you want to get out of a mentor, not just about actually turning up and speaking to someone because someone's kind of almost said that's a right fit for you. But if it's not working, then find someone else to coach through. I'm a big fan of reverse mentoring as well. I find it quite hard to do, being quite honest, because every time I try to sit in a meeting or learn from people within the team, they think I'm there to watch for stuff, but I'm really there to learn, and I learn every day from all people in the business, whether they've just started or they've been here for many, many years. And I think sometimes titling it up, we can kind of get closed in with this is the purpose of this meeting, but every opportunity when you're talking to someone else, you're learning.
Hello, and thank you very much for your talk. It's been very interesting. Both of you became directors very recently in May, and I just wondered how that has changed your view on Tesco or your management styles.
So changing my management styles hasn't. I still am quite silly, probably toned it down a little bit, but it won't change me. I'm more aware of the shadow that I can cast, and that is a bit broader across people at Tesco, just for the role that I have. But it's not going to change how I act or how I behave. I have a responsibility for a wider group of people, and that weighs on my mind quite a lot. But again, that's not going to change the building blocks of me. In terms of them being promoted to director, I'm incredibly proud of it. Let's face it, when you've put in so much work to your career, it's great to step on to the next level. And I really felt that I was ready for it at that time. But I thought I was ready for it at that time because of all of the career experiences that I had and across that journey, rather than just that I'd done X amount of years in a certain role and I was ready to move on. And I really felt that I could bring something to the package leadership team as well. And I'd been in discussions with people across my career journey and kind of mentoring and coaching to make sure that I was ready for my next step on, and was really happy.
Yeah, I think, in terms of your management style and how you sometimes get work done and delegation, I think none of that changes. No matter what role you're in and what level you are, actually, you've got a way of working. I think the thing that I found most interesting, and it's partly related to the fact that I look after pharmacies and opticians, is there's 3,000 people working on pharmacies and 2,000 working on opticians, and actually the culture you create, I found very rewarding, although it comes with a risk around just how do you kind of create a culture and values that you expect your team to lead. And I guess that is very interesting, and particularly how do you do that at a distance? So what do I expect of my pharmacy managers in 400 shops, right? And how do you convey that without your colleagues being round about you? That is definitely a learning, and probably a learning I'm still on, frankly. In terms of kind of digital ways of communication, I don't think we've even touched the iceberg, actually, of how do we communicate round, if I look at WhatsApp, for example, all my pharmacy managers are on WhatsApp. And that's their main method of communication, and you can get messages out through WhatsApp in just super quick time. So anyway, that's probably a journey I'm on. So that's been very interesting. But yeah, the values, the values we expect of our managers to lead, and how they lead that with their teams. I guess that's been something that I've been focused on probably since I got promoted.
So you've both moved around jobs quite a lot as well. When you've started a new role, how have you built confidence quite quickly that you can do it if it's something that's quite out of what you've done before, like out of your comfort zone?
So every time I've gone into a new job, I wake up every morning and I wait for someone to tap me on the shoulder and say, we've worked out that you don't really know what you're doing. And the world of, I don't have any children, the world of beauty is slightly alien to me in terms of all this regime 7-step process that I'm supposed to be doing to my face. And that's quite kind of new. But as Chris said earlier in his presentation, I know the Tesco customer. It's a bit like, I always kind of tell myself, it's like an iOS software update. It's a short-term fix that I really need to kind of get over in terms of the products and the product area. But I know how to manage, and I know how to lead, and I know how to understand the Tesco customer, and I know how to work with suppliers. And I can apply all those skills, and actually I'll learn the different types of face mask or clay shampoo that I should be using on my hair however many times a month. And all of those things will come. And I'll never be afraid to say, I just don't know. And that's the biggest skill that I always take with me into a new role.
It's a really good question, actually, because I've had some really tough starts actually to new roles. It hasn't, I don't know if I made it sound easy by any stretch. It's not. And you do go into new areas and you think, wow, I'm not sure if I can do this. But I think, it's kind of Sinead said, there are reasons why you end up in roles or new roles, and it's usually related to the capabilities that you have. And although they might not, you might think, are they directly transferable or not? I think you genuinely have capabilities that are very, very transferable to the new area that you're in. And it's kind of just almost taking a step back and thinking what those are. And then the other thing I'd say is, and this kind of goes across Tesco, I just think we have brilliant people out there who can help. And any area I've ever gone into, even Tesco kind of pre-2014, I actually think people were always there to help me. So as I've gone into buy crisps, I'll be candid with you, I did not know how to buy crisps. I didn't know how to buy full stop, right? But I had a brilliant manager at the time. I had a brilliant director. And actually I had a bit of a network of people around about who I could ask stupid questions to. So, I think that bit, so you're never on your own, for sure. I was a bit in Korea, but normally you're not on your own. And you can bring, you'll bring a different perspective and your different talents to any role that you go into. So that's probably what I'd say. Yeah.
Just to round off, we have some of our fantastic colleagues that support women at Tesco at the front here. So if anyone would like to kind of stay behind and talk to the team about how to kind of take women at Tesco forward, really appreciate it. We're working on kind of events coming up and how we can actually really step change that group. But thank you all for listening to our journeys.
Thank you.
And hopefully that was interesting.
Right.